All right, welcome everyone. Again, this is session number 2 of our CC RISA Summer EdTech Training Series. The focus is digital citizenship for a remote educational environment. I'm Allison Rogers, the Instructional Technology Specialist at CC RISA. So again, you can follow along with that bit.ly link that's case sensitive to find the links to the content we're talking about today. And let's go ahead and get started. So the focus of today is going to first talk about just some considerations for digital norms and classroom expectations, maybe some things that you may or may not have thought about as we head into the new school year, and knowing that the environment might look a little differently. We're also going to focus on specific digital citizenship resources. First, we're going to focus on resources for teachers. Then we're going to talk about some resources for students. And lastly, some information and resources specific to parents and families. So we're going to start with the considerations, right? What might you want to consider for digital norms and classroom expectations in general, right? Digital citizenship is something that exists in our world no matter if we're in a pandemic or not, right? We need to teach those explicit skills for 21st century learners, and we need to make sure that they are able to exist in an online environment, no matter if we are teaching them face-to-face, teaching them remotely, or maybe a hybrid version of that. So digital citizenship is very much a crucial aspect of learning, no matter the state of the world, essentially. So what is digital citizenship? ISTE defines it as digital citizenship is about much more than online safety or a long list of to-dos or don'ts. It's about the do's that help create thoughtful, empathetic digital citizens who can wrestle with the important ethical questions at the intersection of technology and humanity, right? So it's kind of where technology meets, using your own brain and making decisions for yourself in a safe way. Those do's include using technology to make your community better, and I'll show you an example of that shortly. Engaging respectfully online with people who have different beliefs than you. I think we all probably have witnessed that happen successfully, maybe not so successfully, especially in the recent months. Using technology to make your voice heard by public leaders and to shape public policy, obviously a very important concept in our country, and determining the validity of online sources of information, which that last one I'll show you some resources that we can really support our kids in using, but I think that is also a skill that adult learners could benefit from as well. So again, example of using technology to make your community better, since we're kind of in the times here. This is just an article, if you wanted to click on it, talking about how East Lansing schools had used 3D printers to make masks for Sparrow hospital medical staff. So, kind of cool ways in which we can use technology for good, right? Sometimes it gets a bad name, but I think if we share that good news, it's just as important as the other kinds of news. And then also, I'm going to again show you an example of how to support students in how they might be able to disseminate information in a way that is really accurate and safe, and to be able to say, yes, this site is credible because, or this site is not credible because of this reason. So for example, this concept of misinformation regarding the pandemic. Well, here are 3 credible sources that students could go through and kind of analyze and determine or assess whether those websites are credible or not. So this would be a great learning opportunity to say, hey, there's lots of news around this specific topic. Find me some sources that are legitimate and prove to me as to why, right? We're making that skill real life for them. Okay, so I'm going to talk just a little bit about the remote learning approach and maybe just some considerations, right? So this part isn't going to necessarily have any clickable links or resources, but I think of it as things that maybe we might not have considered maybe in the past couple months, or things that maybe we need to tweak and reshape when we approach a learning environment that might be remote or a hybrid, right? So my best suggestion is to consider the approach as it's the first day of school no matter the time of year you start remotely, right? So obviously this fall, there'll be a first day of school, and that will be, a traditional rollout of, rules and expectations and all of those sort of introductory pieces. However, based on past several months, we may or may not be in an online or a blended or a hybrid type of environment. So whenever that happens, should always consider to kind of take a step back when you're presenting information in a new platform, right? So if you're suddenly teaching in a remote environment, you want to kind of take a step back and say, okay, what would be some of the skills and expectations that students would need to be explicitly taught in order to navigate this new learning environment, right? And not even just students, but what would be something that a new learner in this environment would need to know, right? What's expected of them? So especially with, you know, respecting the concept of confusion and anxiety, right? Anytime there's new learning, sometimes that exists, especially in a situation such as this. So I think it's important to, humanize yourself in the situation. Explain like, hey, I'm learning right along with you guys. This isn't going to be perfect. It's going to be better. I've tweaked some things maybe from prior months, but we're working on this together. The second you can humanize yourself and put yourself sort of in that position of like, I might be your teacher, but I don't know everything. I think that kind of, I don't know, it gives you a little bit more credibility in the eyes of the student. Student safety and health. Obviously, recognizing that learning truly is secondary in that standpoint. Checking in on them as kiddos and not just students. Transparency with your teaching learning curve, as I mentioned before. Maybe talking about your own learning. What was something that you learned over the summer, or maybe what's something that you're still struggling with? I think when kids can see adults even, doing that sort of lifelong learning, I think it's really powerful. Opportunity for growth, take positive risks, right? So I think that this is an opportunity for lots of learning and sort of, flying by the seat of our pants type of learning, but it's also the opportunity to really maybe try some different things that we hadn't considered or thought maybe, I don't have time for that, or I don't necessarily have the skill set to test that out, try that tool or that resource, that lesson. This is an opportunity for that. And lastly, constantly offer help and encourage self-advocacy. So I think self-advocacy especially is important, an important skill for any kid to develop, but especially when you might not have that face-to-face interaction where you can't raise your hand or go up to the teacher. Advocating in a different way and spelling out what that might need to look like in an online environment, right? And then just talking about the actual environment in which you are teaching and they are learning, right? Maybe discuss what your physical space looks like. Talk about your challenges, right? I mean, maybe you've got a dog barking in the background, or maybe you've got to share a space with, 3 others, or whatever it might look like. Explain that experience so they know, hey, we're all kind of in our, within our own challenges. And then give some recommendations, right? Talking about just sort of the dedicated space for if you are in fact learning remotely, from home, giving yourself okay, I'm going to go to this specific space when it's time for school, if you will. Instead of, I'm just going to open up my computer and hop on to whatever it is I need to do, and I'm, on the couch or I'm in bed or that sort of thing. So you want to just, give them the tools to make it feel as normal as possible. Having charged devices and just talking with family, like, hey, I'm going to, be at class right now, or I'm going to be taking a test, or I need to, quiet space, communicating that with family around you. And then sharing the importance of maintaining routine. I think we've all maybe experienced that a little bit the past couple months, especially, when you're working in a new environment, but you're doing your same job, right? And so just little things like talking them through, and this I think could translate to, both elementary and secondary kids, just talking about that importance of, setting an alarm and, sticking to a normal bedtime and movement and all of those things that I think a lot of times we just assume that people or kids know, but I think just really being explicit with that explanation and demonstrating the importance of that with your own experiences. So a lot of that might sound a little bit like, well, yeah, of course they need to do these things, but I think because we're in such a unique environment now, I think it's sometimes a good reminder, and perhaps even some kids may have never been explicitly taught some of those behaviors. So I created a little list of sort of norms and expectations and behaviors that you might want to explicitly teach. And some of the examples are like muting yourself when you're not talking. If you're in a Zoom or a Meet or that sort of environment, that one seems to be like the obvious, but just talking about those type of behaviors, like, right, what happens if if you have tech issues and you're trying to join a class or one-on-one with a student or teacher or whatever, what do you do instead of, throwing your hands up or immediately asking for help? Walking through the steps of like, okay, did you test this? Did you try that? And then it puts the onus on them, and then they feel empowered when they can figure out whatever that issue is. And then also talking about things like, hey, here's the appropriate behavior we want to see, and maybe here's the behavior we don't want to see. Sometimes it's obvious, and sometimes it might not be obvious to kids in a learning environment that is not face-to-face, right? So if you want to click on that link, this just gives you a couple more ideas of considerations, right? Just things that may or may not seem obvious to us as adults, but considerations that, hey, you know what? I've never really explicitly discussed how I want students to email me, or what is, using that as an opportunity to say, hey, if you're emailing an adult, here are some things that you might want to consider for appropriate etiquette versus if you're sending a text to a friend, right? I mean, just talking about that, I think goes a long way and normalizes the behavior that you're expecting to see in a remote environment before things come up. So if you can address those in the beginning, great, right? Not to say things won't come up throughout the school year, but it's nice to be able to kind of take a step back and say, hey, we might go remote or we are remote, but let's kind of take some time, step back, let's talk about what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, and how we can help each other. I think that it can be a really powerful conversation to kick off the school year or kick off whenever your environment changes for teaching and learning. So again, that was, a lot of just, considerations, things to think about as we're heading into fall, both as educators and parents and students. I think everyone can reflect on some of those thoughts. So now we're going to get into some of the actual resources and clickable links that you can use. And I labeled this as resources for teachers, but I think that these are really helpful tools for teachers or educators in a variety of different roles. And even as some of the resources I'll show you, you might even be able to use them even if you're not necessarily in a school or in a classroom, that there are resources that might help you practice your own digital citizenship skills and get you a little bit savvier with how to navigate that online world safely. Okay, so first and foremost, I have to address specifically for teachers this resource called MyTex. It's the Michigan Integrated Technology Competencies for Students. So they're similar to the ISTE standards, and so they're kind of just this this list of competencies or things that educators would expect students to be able to know and learn and develop in an online learning environment, or not even an online learning environment, but just when they work and learn within technology. So it focuses on learning enhanced by technology rather than technology tools. And I really think that's important to reference, in that it's not saying, hey, you need to know every little detail about every little tech tool and how it works and more of the tinkering part of it, but more so how that technology allows the learning and the instruction to be more robust and improves the overall learning experience. And then it talks about how it's a learner-driven approach. So like giving students these skills to be able to then use them in kind of any type of learning environment, right? So it's not just, hey, we're going to learn this standard that's really isolated in this particular situation, but no, these standards could cover, K-12 education. They could also cover all the subject areas, right? And beyond, those like life skills as well. So if you click on the first link, it will show you the actual MyTex competencies. And, you can see there's, empowered learner, digital citizen, knowledge constructor, creative communicator, innovative designer, global collaborator, computational thinker. And so they're essentially just a list of skill sets that students should be able to do in navigating the technology world. And so again, some of these might say, well, yeah, of course, we would expect them to be able to do these things, but think, again, sometimes explicitly teaching these skills first, and then allowing them to, those skill sets to seep through into the content area. And, it's really empowering when they already have those skills. And then I also just wanted to reference, there is an age band articulation. So just basically goes through and shows you the range of skills for particular age groups. So you could go through and access the age groups in which, how the competencies build upon each other. Okay, so those are the MyTech standards. And again, that's kind of like your framework. Like, all right, we want students to eventually be able to be successful in all of those competencies. But let's talk about more so like, what are some of the practices and resources and lessons that we can have them utilize to then actually get them competent in those skills. So the next resource is Digital Citizenship, or REMC's Digital Citizenship Toolkit. And REMC's got some great free resources that I'll be addressing. But this is essentially like professional development for teachers, or again, anyone who works in an educational environment. So it's meant to allow you kind of to navigate through this on your own, and it has like resources for digital citizenship for kids, but also, for the teacher side of things, and it includes activities and lots of good stuff. So I'll just click on that real quick. So if you scroll down, you'll be able to see the toolkit. And there we go. It talks about what the toolkit contains, and then it has a bunch of clickable links of, that has all the content and the PDFs and resources and videos and stuff that you can go through. You can even download the full version. But this is kind of a great jumping off point for teachers who maybe need to work a little bit more on their own knowledge of digital citizenship and how to teach it. The next resource is from Common Sense Education, and I love Common Sense Education. They have so many fantastic tools, again, that are free, and they're vetted, and they have really like a complete comprehensive look of a lot of these topics. Like, they'll have a lesson, but they'll also have like a video, and they'll have like an example, and they'll have an assessment, and video resources. I mean, it's really, really solid. So they've got K-12 lesson plans that are free, and if you actually create an account, it'll allow you to access even more, and it's, again, free to create an account. So it looks something like this. So this is the digital citizenship focus for Common Sense Education, and you can click, get free lessons, and then you can go through and like pick your age band, and then go through. I think I'm logged in right now, so you can see a little bit more than you would if you weren't logged in. But again, just create an account. So you can filter, and then you can like pick your specific topic, right? And go down, and you can click on whatever grade level you want to look at, and then you can go through, and it'll give you like kind of the objectives, and the lesson plan gives you the time frame, even breaks it down further for like the amount of time for each activity. And then you've got like clickable links, guides, like actual lessons, slides. I mean, lots of really slick stuff. So you could even go through and just use pieces of this. You don't have to do a whole lesson. But so instead of trying to reinvent the wheel and create your own lesson, especially when you're trying to focus on a specific topic within digital citizenship, this is a really powerful resource. Okay. Oh, and then I threw in a couple examples down here, but I wanted to point out the 6th grade one, the Finding Credible News, as I kind of referenced before. This is a really cool one because obviously I think that's probably one of the skills that we struggle with maybe even as a society. But talking through, like, here's a lesson plan, and let me click on the 25-minute portion. It just talks about like basically the steps you need to take to be able to figure out, like, even this handout I think references like steps, like, okay, first read it closely, then analyze the source, and look, and it has this handout that's already created for you, right? So you can make a copy of it, make it your own, share it out with kids, put it in your within your curriculum. Again, Common Sense Education, really slick stuff. In addition, they've got a digital passport, and this is for grades 3 through 5, and it's 6 modules that are about 20 minutes each, and it's a little bit more gamified. So if I were to click on the digital passport, and again, there's an educator guide, but I can go through and like there's different topics, but like let's say I want to, it gives you the kind of breakdown of what's included in here, but I'm going to click play game. There's also the share to Google Classroom option, which is really cool. Anything that plays well with Google, specifically Classroom, I think is a huge win in the eyes of educators. So you can see like it literally gamifies within your digital passport. So you could push this to Google Classroom and have this be, some even opening of your lesson to digital citizenship, or it gives you a little bit more individualized, or maybe there's, kids that need either whether it's, they're done with their work early or they need something a little bit beyond. This is a great, really like positive use of time type of gamified option. And again, there's the educator guide here. Okay, now let's jump to Google for Education, specifically the Teacher Center. This is also really great for not just teachers, but anyone working in a school environment. And this is the part where I was kind of thinking of anyone who's a non-teacher or not actually within an actual school. This might be for you. This is sort of like it's a little online course that's free, and it's self-paced and everything, but I can see this little screenshot, if you finish, one part of the course and you move to the next, and gives you like a time frame for how long it takes. But again, you can sign in with Google and then, take, different parts of the course. And it just, this is something that, again, it's not just students that maybe need to learn some of this stuff or even brush up on those skills, but sometimes I think it's helpful for us as adult learners to brush up on our skills and get a little reminder of like, hey, here's, a way to stay away from phishing scam, just things like that we all navigate in an online environment. So this kind of gives you that more individualized time to get comfortable with your own digital citizenship and navigating the online world. So that is the Teacher Center one for that. And then in addition, there is teaching applied digital skills lessons. And then I've got some secondary and upper elementary examples thrown in here. But if I click on the link, it again takes me to Google for Education, Applied Digital Skills. And again, the breakdown for teachers, for students, and you can have your lessons. But what's nice is you can actually go through on the left-hand side and filter by audience, by tool, by topic, all that. And then once you get what you want, you can, take a look at whatever lessons it is that you want to look at. And, you get the time frame and essentially the pre-made lesson. It gives you the activities, clickable links to the videos, teaching materials. So what's really nice about Google for Education and the Common Sense Education, oh, that escaped me for a minute. What's really nice about both of those two resources is they're free, they're credible, they're vetted, and it's for things that we really don't need to necessarily spend time in making our own. We might like tweak some things, but like why work in our own silos if we can borrow these resources that are already really solid, right? Allow that to be a time saver. The next resource for teachers is called HyperDocs, and some of you might have heard of HyperDocs in that you can use them obviously in a variety of different age groups and subject areas, but specifically I found a digital citizenship HyperDoc. So just to give you some context, the definition of a HyperDoc essentially is where all components of a learning cycle have been pulled together into one central hub. Within a single document, students are provided with hyperdocs or hyperlinks to all the resources they need to complete that learning cycle. So what that means essentially is all of the links and the videos and the resources they're going to need within learning a specific topic or lesson or unit, it's all put into one Google Doc or one slide deck, and they navigate through that throughout the whole learning cycle. So it's easier to explain, I think, if you see an actual example. So I'm going to click on the digital citizenship hyperdoc. And again, this has already been created for you. So you could either use this one, make a copy, tweak it, make it your own. And it goes through and it's got some this one's talking about digital footprint. And it kind of makes it a fun version of like, hey, be aware of what you're posting online, right? Like, what is a digital footprint, and does it go away? And lets you create an avatar, and it just is a fun, a little bit more interactive way of getting across whatever focus you are within digital citizenship. But again, like everything you need to know in this lesson is all right here, right? Like the links are right here. Right? The directions are right here. So I could, shorten this or copy it, make it my own, and then, push it through whatever platform I'm using as an educator. So again, before you necessarily create your own hyperdoc, check out the hyperdocs that exist. There's lots of cool hyperdocs for things beyond digital citizenship as well. There's like tons of them out there. And this is just a website that if you ever wanted to kind of dig into a little bit more about like, what do hyperdocs do for teaching? Like, why would we use them? What benefit would they give us? This is a blog that talks about like all of those things, like why, what they are, what's the purpose of them, and then gives you some examples as well. So, all right, I'm getting too many tabs open. Okay. Next, we're going to jump to resources for students specifically. So we talked about what digital citizenship is. We talked about kind of some suggestions and recommendations and considerations for remote learning in the fall or whenever that ends up happening. Showed you some teacher resources, and now we're going to dig into specifically resources for students when it comes to digital citizenship. So first and foremost, REMC again. And REMC's 21 Things for Students is really a great tool too. It's free, and it's all activities. This is specific to grades 5 through 9, and I've pulled out a couple different examples and linked them in this slide as well. But you can go through here and there's also a 21 Things for Teachers, and I think there's a 21 Things for Administrators too. But you can go through and click on any of these topics, right? So it's not just digital citizenship, but it's like digging into even more pieces beyond that. So for example, let's go with the digital footprint again. Maybe I want a topic focused on that. I can click there and I can kind of go through this like self-paced course, right? I've got videos, my learning objectives, and then it gamifies it a bit. It gives you quests to complete, right? So you could have that again be, something that your class does, or maybe it's something that they come to the table with before you even, move forward in whatever lesson you want to dig into as a group, right? This would be a great way to kind of get their feet wet in specifically, digital footprinting. So this is just one example of the many resources. And again, they've got, a teacher guide, and they've got, quizzes and different lessons. But again, 21 Things for Students, specifically the digital citizenship lessons are slick. Google's Interland, Be Internet Awesome. So this is another kind of gamified quest-based resource that literally lets them play this game and navigate the different levels based on how they do in this game. But it is all about digital citizenship and being safe online. So they recommend the age is like 8 to 12 for this interland, but Google has created this. And again, I think there's some really loud music that plays at the beginning, so if you can hear that. But it doesn't necessarily feel like a more like learning type of game to the kids because it's so gamified, but it's definitely they're definitely learning some cool stuff. So yeah, Google Interland, and then you can play it, navigate different levels. Anyway, you get the idea. All right, so those two are really some great resources for students. And again, obviously the student resources are also linked to, all the resources they gave in the teacher section with regard to a lot of the lessons that you could potentially push out and share with them and teach them. So lastly, we're going to talk about some resources for parents. And this is more of just here's some helpful articles. But this first one I want to point out it's called National Online Safety. And this is you can I guess subscribe to this this platform, or it's basically a website that you can go to and actually get different guides based on various tools, right? So this one is like top 10 tips for remote learning for parents, but the website itself has tons of them, and they come out every Wednesday. They'll send out a new PDF of whatever the cool new, game or tool or social media, something that kids are using, right? So you can go through and say, hey, I know my kid has been on, I don't know, Instagram or whatever it is that they're using. There's literally, you can go through and see all the different, PS4 and Disney Plus and Zoom, and it's not just about games. It does have some. I think there was one for can't even think of the name of but they have ones for yeah, Call of Duty, literally anything that your kids are likely into. They're going to have some sort of guide that is very parent friendly. It'll say, what is the guide? What does this tool even mean? You can kind of see the example here, but it'll give you tips and tricks, and it'll say hey, be aware of this, or here's how to make sure that they have this, setting enabled, or this safety feature enabled. And so it's really kind of it helps you, have conversations with your students about how to be safe, but it also gives you the tools as the parent or the teacher, or just the adult in their life, that allows them to make sure that hey, you can be on this platform, or you can be on, use this game, but here's just making sure that you're being safe and that you're maintaining your privacy and all those things that come along with that. So National Online Safety Guides within National Online Safety. So again, go to their site, subscribe, and then you'll get an email from them every Wednesday. And they also have some stuff on Twitter if you follow them. But I would recommend that resource for parents. And then lastly, this is just a slide of various links that just have some powerful articles, but just, let's see, this one I think is pretty good. How to get kids ready. Oh, and look at that, it was Common Sense Media. They also have great articles too, but how to get kids ready to video chat for online classes, right? So whether you yourself are a parent or a teacher, this would be great stuff to share with parents who are, wanting to make sure that their kids are ready to go for the online environment and are safe, but maybe aren't quite sure how to approach it, right? Or screen time management apps. These would be, I would imagine, very popular with maybe not even just the secondary folks, but really ensuring that these apps can help kids manage their own time online and be safe. And then as an adult or as a parent, you can limit some of their time and that sort of thing too. Here's another one on digital footprints. Oh, and that link is broken, but Ultimate Guide to Parent Controls. Again, giving them a step-by-step. They don't have to know everything, right? They don't have to know everything about every tool or every game or every platform their kid is on. But what they can do is kind of get a general idea or get like a list of tips to say like, hey, make sure if your kid's on this, they're not doing that, or make sure if your kid's on this, this is enabled. So again, just giving them some tools to ensure that kids are ready and kids are safe and that they feel comfortable supporting their own kids in an online environment as well. So those were the resources for both, or for all of them, the teachers, students, and parents. Hopefully, when you take a look at this this presentation later, those links will be helpful to you. And then I know we have different, different people in different positions within education on the session today, but hopefully you found something that was helpful. And just a reminder that this we have 2 more sessions within the Summer Ed Tech training series. The next one is Google Meet versus Zoom, Telecommunication Tools 101, and that is next Wednesday at noon. Also a reminder that we have our 517 Ed Tech virtual lunch and learn, and that's going to be the second one of the summer, and that's August 5th, so you can click on that link to RSVP. And of course, we have our 2020 virtual TI4A conference on August 11th, so be sure to register for that. So I'm going to jump to the chat and address some of your questions.